Christmas Eve should have felt magical, but when I opened the front door, the house was silent, echoing with emptiness. No laughter, no family, only 3 confused children staring back at me. Then my phone rang. My parents' voices, smug and gleeful, cut through the quiet. "We're in Hawaii. Your gift as the single one is babysitting." In that instant, decades of injustice came flooding back. Every Christmas I had been sidelined, every moment I had been treated as less. This wasn't just abandonment, it was betrayal. And for the first time, I knew their game was about to end. I balanced the wrapped boxes in my arms as I walked up the snowy path to my parents' home. The glow of Christmas lights shimmering against the night. My breath rose in soft clouds, and with each step I felt the faintest stirrings of hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, I wouldn't just be the forgotten daughter lingering in the background. I pressed the doorbell, smiling faintly at the thought of walking into a room filled with laughter, music, and warmth. The door creaked open, but the sound that met me was not laughter, not the jingle of carols, not the chatter of relatives. Silence. My smile faltered as I stepped inside. The house was lit beautifully. Garlands hung on the banister, candles flickered on the table, and stockings lined the fireplace. It looked perfect, but it felt wrong. The air was too still, too heavy. Then I heard it, a soft whimper. My eyes darted to the living room, and there they were. 3 small children, my sister's kids, staring at me with wide, uncertain eyes. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. I set the presents down slowly, confusion flooding me. "Where's everyone else?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. The children shrugged, and the youngest began to cry. I gathered him into my arms, instinct taking over, but the question pounded in my chest. Where were my parents? The ringing of my phone broke the silence. I fumbled it out of my pocket, answered, and my mother's cheerful voice rang through, distorted by poor reception, yet dripping with satisfaction. "Maddie, surprise! We're in Hawaii!" Behind her, waves crashed, music blared, and laughter erupted. My father chimed in with a chuckle. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. We thought you'd love the experience of taking care of your nephews. You're single after all. You've got the time. Think of it as our gift to you." My heart clenched. "You left the kids here? Alone?" My voice shook, but they didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't care. "Oh, come now." My mother laughed lightly as if I were being dramatic. "It's good for you. You'll thank us one day. Besides, Amanda deserves a break too, and you've always been so good with children. This way, everyone wins." Gaslighting. They made it sound as if I should be grateful, as if they were doing me a kindness by abandoning me with 3 young kids on Christmas Eve. My father added, "You always said you wanted more responsibility." Well, here it is. Step up, Maddie. I forced out a laugh that didn't sound like mine. Right, responsibility, a gift. My words tasted bitter, like ash on my tongue. But inside, something cracked. A piece of me that had been holding on to hope for too long splintered and fell away. I looked at the children, innocent, confused, shivering in their holiday pajamas, and I felt the weight of it all pressing down. I had been the invisible daughter my whole life, the stand-in, the scapegoat, and tonight they had proven it again. Even on Christmas, the night meant to celebrate love and togetherness, I was nothing more than a convenient caretaker. The children clung to me, and I tried to steady my breathing. I moved them into the kitchen, made hot chocolate, found blankets to wrap around their small shoulders. My hands worked automatically the way they always did, quiet, competent, unappreciated. The house looked like a holiday postcard, but the reality was colder than the snow outside. As the kids drifted off on the couch, I wandered into the hallway. My eyes fell on the framed family photo from years ago. Amanda beamed in the center, our parents' arms wrapped proudly around her shoulders. I was there too, off to the side, smile faint, half hidden by the frame's edge. A decorative ghost. Even in photographs, I had been reduced to an afterthought. The phone buzzed again, another message from my parents, this time a picture of them clinking glasses on the beach, cocktails in hand. "Cheers to family," the caption read. My chest tightened, a sharp ache spreading like frostbite. They didn't see the cruelty, didn't even acknowledge it. To them, it was a joke, a holiday twist. I pressed the phone against my chest, trying to silence the storm rising within me. For so long, I had told myself it didn't matter, that their favoritism, their constant comparisons, were just quirks, not cruelty. But this was undeniable. This wasn't just neglect, it was betrayal, wrapped in tinsel and bows. I sank into a chair, the glow of the Christmas tree casting fractured light across the room. I closed my eyes and let the bitterness seep through. Is this love? I whispered to no one. Or is this punishment for being me? The children stirred in their sleep, their small breaths soft and steady. I pulled the blanket tighter around them, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to scream, to call them back, to demand answers. But I knew better. They wouldn't listen. They never did. The house hummed with emptiness, the silence almost cruel in its weight. I stared at the tree, at the shining ornaments reflecting my own hollow expression. The perfect image of family surrounded me, but it was only that, an image, a facade. Behind it was nothing but fractures, favoritism, and abandonment. And in that quiet, I felt the ground beneath me shift. Something inside me whispered that this was not just another Christmas disappointment. This was the breaking point, the night I would stop waiting for their approval, stop clinging to illusions. Because what kind of gift was this, to be reminded so clearly, so mercilessly, of how little I mattered? And yet, as the night deepened, a strange calm settled over me. Beneath the sorrow, beneath the anger, there was a seed of something new, a seed that would grow into fury, into clarity, into action. Where was the laughter, the joy, the warmth of family? Gone, replaced by betrayal and silence. Only the soft cries of children in the winter night remained. The next morning, I woke to the sound of little feet padding across the hardwood floor. The boys were already awake, their laughter faint but strained, carrying that peculiar pitch of children trying to pretend everything was normal. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, sat up on the couch, and smiled at them. They smiled back, though one of them hesitated before saying something that froze me in place. "Grandma said you don't have anything better to do, Aunt Maddie. That's why you're here." The words landed sharper than any insult I'd ever endured. My throat tightened. I forced a laugh, hoping they wouldn't see the sting. But in their innocent faces, I saw the reflection of my parents' disdain trickling down like venom into the next generation. Even the children were taught that I was less, that I was simply a spare part in the family machine. The phrase echoed in my mind, "Nothing better to do." That had always been my role, hadn't it? The backup. The one called when no one else wanted to be bothered. The daughter left on the sidelines, always available because no one ever asked what I wanted for myself. My chest tightened as memories unfurled, sharp and vivid. I was 8 years old again, Christmas morning. Amanda tore the wrapping paper off a brand new bicycle, its red paint gleaming under the tree lights. She squealed with delight, and my parents clapped proudly, snapping photos. When it was my turn, I reached for the small box with my name on it. Inside was a book, used, with a creased spine and someone else's handwriting in the margins. My mother smiled, saying it was more thoughtful than a toy because I was always the serious one. I had smiled too, clutching that book, pretending I was grateful. But that night, as Amanda pedaled around the driveway and the neighbors cheered, I sat alone, flipping through the pages, trying to believe I mattered. Now, decades later, the pattern repeated. The cycle had never broken. My parents had written my role for me long ago, and every year they reinforced it. A tug on my sleeve pulled me back. The youngest boy, with tears in his eyes, whispered, "Are you mad at us?" My heart cracked open. I shook my head quickly, kneeling to pull him into my arms. "No, sweetheart, never at you." The warmth of his tiny body pressed against mine, and for the first time in years, I felt something pure. Love that wasn't conditional, wasn't earned by sacrifice. love that was simply there, honest and fragile. I held him tightly, breathing in the faint scent of baby shampoo, letting that moment soften the jagged edges inside me. I wanted to freeze it, to bottle it up and keep it forever, because it felt like proof that maybe I wasn't broken, maybe I could be loved. But even as my heart swelled, a shadow crept in. Love was dangerous in my family. Every time I'd let myself believe in it, they had weaponized it, turning tenderness into weakness, exploiting my longing for their approval. I closed my eyes, pressing my lips to the boy's hair. "This love will cost you," a voice inside whispered, "and the price will be heavy." Later that afternoon, I searched the closets for extra blankets. My hands brushed against a shoebox tucked deep behind winter coats. Curiosity tugged at me. I pulled it out, sat cross-legged on the floor, and lifted the lid. Inside were old cards, letters, scraps of family memories my mother must have kept. I reached for the one on top, its edges yellowed with age. The handwriting was hers. I recognized it instantly, sharp loops, careful strokes. I unfolded the paper and my eyes caught on the words that made my stomach twist. "Sometimes I wish Maddie had been born like Amanda. So bright, so easy to love. Instead, she is different, difficult. I don't know what to do with her." My breath caught. I read it again, my vision blurring. It wasn't a child's paranoia, not a misinterpretation of subtle slights. It was written proof, ink on paper, that my mother had always wished I were someone else. Amanda, not me, never me. The room tilted. My chest heaved as if all the air had been sucked away. I wanted to rip the letter apart, but my hands shook too badly to tear it. I pressed it against my knees, rocking slightly as memories collided. Every dismissal, every smirk, every moment they looked through me instead of at me. It wasn't in my head. I had been the scapegoat child, the one to carry the burden, the mistakes, the disappointments they could never place on their golden daughter. And now I was doing it again, carrying their responsibilities, their neglect, their lies. Tears burned down my cheeks. For a moment, I wished I could vanish, dissolve into nothingness, so I wouldn't have to hold this weight anymore. But the sound of the boys' laughter in the other room anchored me. They were innocent. They didn't know. They were repeating the poison because it was all they'd been taught. I shoved the letter back into the box, but the words seared into me, branding themselves deeper than any scar. My mother's truth. My family's truth. I leaned against the wall, covering my face with my hands. So this is what I was to them. Not a daughter, not even a person. Just a shadow, a mistake, a placeholder for someone they wished existed instead. I thought I had hit bottom last night, standing alone in the house decorated like a postcard, realizing they had abandoned me again. But no, that wasn't the bottom. This was. And yet, even as the floor seemed to drop beneath me, I sensed there was still farther to fall, because when the venom spreads, it never stops at one wound. It started with a cough. At first, I brushed it off, thinking the boys were just restless from the cold night before. But by evening, the youngest was flushed red, his forehead damp with sweat. His small body trembled as he curled against me, whispering that he felt cold even under the blankets. Panic tightened my chest. I searched the cabinets for medicine, but the only bottles I found were years expired. My hands shook as I pressed the phone to my ear, dialing my parents. When my mother answered, laughter and music nearly drowned out her voice. "Maddie! Aloha! How are the boys?" I swallowed hard. "One of them is sick. He has a fever. I need to know what to do. Should I take him to the hospital?" "Oh, relax," my father's voice boomed in the background. "Children get sick all the time. Don't overreact." I clenched my fist. "He's burning up. I'm serious." There was a pause, and then my mother sighed with exasperation, as if I were the inconvenience. "Maddie, you always dramatize everything. Just give him some water and put him to bed. You'll be fine. You've got this." My phone buzzed. A new message appeared. A photo. My parents, arms wrapped around each other, dancing barefoot in the sand, tiki torches glowing behind them. "Merry Christmas from Paradise," the caption read. My stomach turned. Their grandson was sick, and their daughter was begging for help, but their answer was a photograph of their joy, their perfect escape, as if I didn't exist. I nearly dropped the phone when another call came through. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. My sister's voice, sharp with panic, filled my ear. "Maddie, are the boys okay? Mom and Dad said you volunteered to keep them this week. I just saw something on Facebook. They're in Hawaii?" I froze. "They told you I volunteered?" "Yes," Amanda cried. "They said you offered so I could finally take a vacation. I didn't even know they'd left town. Maddie, what the hell is going on?" It hit me like a blow. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had crafted a story, weaving lies to everyone, painting me as the willing caretaker. Amanda hadn't betrayed me by silence. She had been deceived too. For years, I thought the injustice was favoritism, that Amanda was the golden one who got everything I was denied. But now I saw the deeper truth. Our parents were puppeteers, pulling strings, manipulating us both in different ways. She got the spotlight, I got the shadows, but neither of us had been free. The room tilted as my nephew whimpered, pulling me back. I pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, rocking him gently. But inside, something shattered. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't just neglect. It was deliberate, calculated, not just injustice, a conspiracy. I tried to breathe, but the air clawed at my throat. My thoughts spiraled, and for the first time in years, the old voice returned. The one that whispered when I was a child, when I sat alone with a second-hand book while Amanda paraded her new bike. Maybe they're right. Maybe you're not worth anything more. Maybe you were born to carry everyone else's weight. The words wrapped around me like chains. I carried the boy to the couch, tucked him in, and sat in the dark. The glow of the Christmas tree blinked in steady rhythm, mocking me with its cheerful pretense. A memory surfaced unbidden, my father's hand clasping mine as we walked through snow to the midnight service when I was 6. The church bells had rung, and for once, I had felt safe, cherished. He had lifted me so I could see the choir sing. I had believed then, even if only for that night, that I was loved. The memory cut deeper than the betrayal now, because it meant I had once tasted what I was starving for, and I had believed it could last. Tears blurred the lights. I pressed my forehead against my knees, whispering to the empty room. Maybe they're right. Maybe I was born just to serve, to fill the cracks, to patch the holes, to be the daughter they never wanted but couldn't discard. The children's soft breathing filled the silence. I clung to it, afraid of the darkness pressing at the edges of my mind. Despair seeped in, heavy and suffocating. I thought of the letter, of my mother's cruel words, of my father's indifference. I thought of Amanda's voice, breaking with shock. The truth was unbearable, and yet, even in that suffocating dark, a small flicker stirred inside me, a memory of warmth, a glimpse of another possibility, the whisper of something I wasn't ready to name. Because darkness could last a long time, but it wasn't forever. Shadows only survived until someone lit a flame. The fever had broken by morning, but the children were restless. I moved between the kitchen and living room, making soup, folding blankets, trying to keep my hands busy so my thoughts wouldn't consume me. I was pulling a towel from the dryer when the oldest boy, no more than 10, spoke without looking at me. "Aunt Maddie, is it true? Grandma said you've never really been loved. Is that why you're always alone?" The words pierced deeper than the fever ever could. I froze, the towel slipping from my hands. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide, innocent, unknowing that he had just cut me open with the sharpest blade of all, truth disguised as a child's question. Something inside me snapped. A scream clawed at my throat, but what came out instead was a raw, trembling laugh. "Is that what she told you?" My hands shook as I gripped the counter. My chest burned, fury rushing in where despair had lived. For years I had absorbed their cruelty, accepted their version of me. But hearing it echoed by a child's lips, it was unbearable. I am not unloved, I said, my voice rising firmer than I'd ever heard it. The children looked startled, but I didn't stop. I have been ignored, mistreated, lied about, but that does not mean I am unworthy. It means they are cruel. My hands clenched into fists. My pulse thundered. The quiet resignation that had suffocated me for years was gone. In its place blazed something fierce, righteous, undeniable. That night, after the children were asleep, I collapsed onto the couch and scrolled through my phone, searching for distraction. And there it was, a video trending on TikTok, its caption bold, "Invisible Daughter." A young woman spoke into the camera, her voice breaking as she described being the forgotten child, the one who carried the weight while her siblings shone. She spoke of gaslighting, of favoritism, of being told she was nothing more than spare hands. My breath hitched. It was my story, down to the smallest detail, except it belonged to someone else too. Then the comments scrolled past. Thousands of voices, women and men confessing their own invisible lives. For the first time, I wasn't alone in my pain. The whole world seemed to rise and say, "We see you. We've lived this too." Tears spilled hot down my cheeks, but beneath them surged something harder, sharper, not just grief, power. If the world knew, if others had broken free, then maybe I could too. I wiped my face, sat up straighter, and whispered into the empty room, "I am not a victim anymore. I am a storm." The plan began the next morning. While the boys colored at the table, I quietly collected what I needed. I slipped the fever records into a folder, saved the text messages and voicemails from my parents, captured screenshots of their photos in Hawaii while their grandchildren lay abandoned. Every scrap of neglect, every careless word, they became evidence, proof. Late at night, I searched online for laws about child abandonment. Words leapt out: criminal liability, endangerment, legal consequences. My pulse quickened as I realized it wasn't just moral wrong, it was illegal. I wasn't helpless anymore. There were rules, systems, weapons I could use. Still, I knew I couldn't do it alone. I reached out tentatively to a friend from college who had become a lawyer. My email was short, careful. I need to know what my options are if parents leave children unsupervised. Can you help? Her reply came within an hour. Yes. And Maddie, whatever this is, you don't deserve it. Call me. I sat staring at the screen, my chest aching. 3 words struck hardest. You don't deserve it. Simple, but revolutionary. No one in my family had ever said that. That night, I lit the tree again, its glow soft against the dark. I opened my journal, one I had abandoned years ago, and began to write. The pen moved fast, as if it had been waiting. I wrote every memory, every wound, every time they had made me feel invisible. The pages blurred with ink and tears, my hand cramping, but I couldn't stop. It felt like opening a vein and finally letting poison drain out. I played Christmas music softly, letting the notes wrap around me. For a brief moment, there was peace. A fragile stillness that reminded me of snow falling outside a church when I was a child. I let myself rest in it, breathe in it, because soon I knew peace would end, and I would rise. I closed the journal, wiped my eyes, and whispered into the quiet. They have no idea what's coming, because this time I wasn't going to wait for their love or beg for their approval. I was going to act. And when I did, the world they had built on lies and cruelty would collapse. When I struck, no one would see it coming. The decision came on a cold December morning. My hands trembled as I dialed the number, but my voice was steady when I spoke. Yes, I need to report child abandonment. 3 minors left alone without supervision. The parents are currently out of state. The officer on the other end asked for details, and I gave them everything: ages, addresses, my parents' names, even the evidence I had gathered: texts, photos, recordings. When I hung up, my heart pounded with a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had finally done it. I had broken the silence, but it wasn't enough. That night, after putting the boys to bed, I opened my phone and began to type. The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. I told the world what had happened, how my parents had left their grandchildren unattended as a cruel gift to their forgotten daughter. I uploaded screenshots of their messages, even the smug selfie of them in Hawaii. Then, at the end, I typed, "Merry Christmas from the family that called neglect a present. Sir, parents gone wild." I hit post. The reaction was instant. Notifications exploded, shares multiplied, comments flooded in. Within hours, the hashtag trended. Strangers rallied in anger, in disbelief, in solidarity. People shared their own stories of toxic families, of being scapegoated, of favoritism and betrayal. The world wasn't laughing at me. It was standing beside me. The next day, my parents called, voices shrill with fury. "How dare you humiliate us like this?" my mother hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said, my tone calm for the first time in years. "I told the truth." My father barked threats, but his words sounded empty, desperate. Then the doorbell rang. 2 officers stood there, serious and polite. They asked questions, took statements, documented everything. My parents had been formally summoned for questioning. The mask of their perfect facade had cracked, and now it was crumbling. Word spread quickly in our neighborhood. I caught the sideways glances, heard the whispers as I walked to the store. "Did you hear? The Coopers left their grandkids alone. Madeline had to step in." For once, the whispers weren't against me. They were against them. Amanda arrived days later, her face pale with disbelief. She stormed into the living room, demanding answers. "They told me you volunteered, that you wanted this." Her voice cracked as she turned to me. "I didn't know, Maddie. I swear I didn't." I handed her the evidence, their messages, the proof of their lies. She read in silence, her lips trembling, and then sank into a chair. All this time, I thought I was the favorite. I thought they loved me, but they used me too, didn't they? "Yes," I said softly, "just differently." She looked at me with new eyes, not as the shadow sister, but as someone who had carried a burden she had never seen. Her tears fell, and for the first time in our lives, there was no rivalry, no wall between us, just 2 daughters of the same manipulation. But our parents refused to yield. They tried to shift blame onto me, claiming I had orchestrated everything, that I was unstable, vindictive. They called me a liar, said I was exploiting the children for attention. Their voices grew louder, more frantic, but the more they screamed, the more transparent they became, because the truth was out now. The world had seen, and once the mask fell, it could never be worn the same way again. One evening, as the chaos swirled online and in courtrooms, I took the boys to the park. The snow crunched under our boots, and holiday lights glowed from the houses lining the street. We sat on a bench, sipping hot cocoa, and for the first time that season, I felt warmth that wasn't poisoned. The youngest boy giggled as he pointed to the twinkling lights shaped like reindeer. "It looks like magic," he whispered. I smiled, my chest loosening. "It is magic," I said, and for a moment, I believed it. Not because of decorations or traditions, but because in their laughter, I felt a kind of love I had never received from my parents. Love that was real. I closed my eyes, breathing in the crisp air. The noise of my parents' denials, the accusations, the bitterness. It all faded into the background. What remained was quiet, gentle, steady. I knew the battle wasn't over. They would fight, claw, and scheme to keep control, to protect the image they'd built. But something fundamental had changed. The mask was gone. The truth was exposed. And when the truth is free, it cannot be caged again. Tonight, something ended. Not just the illusion of family, but the grip they had on me. Tonight was the end of their reign, and the beginning of my freedom. The storm passed slowly, but when it cleared, nothing looked the same. My parents returned from Hawaii to find not a welcoming home, but a community that had already judged them. Neighbors who once admired their polished smiles crossed the street to avoid them. Old friends no longer returned their calls. The church pew they had occupied every Sunday sat empty, whispers trailing behind their absence. For decades they had been the model couple, the picture of respectability. Now they were pariahs. In family gatherings that followed, cousins and relatives who had always sided with them shifted uncomfortably, their eyes sliding to me. They had seen the evidence. They had read my words online. Some even admitted what they had long suspected, that I was the one holding everything together while being treated like nothing. At first, I didn't trust their sympathy. But one by one, they told me I was the strongest of us all, the one who had carried the family's silent truth when no one else dared. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. The story didn't end at whispers or neighborhood gossip. A journalist reached out to me, intrigued by the viral post. She wanted to interview me, to give voice to what she called a phenomenon of scapegoated children. At first I hesitated, but something told me this wasn't about exposing my parents anymore. It was about giving a voice to countless others who had lived my pain. When the article came out, the headline read, "The Invisible Daughter Speaks." My photo, not polished or glamorous, but real, eyes tired yet steady, was on the cover. Within days, the piece was shared nationwide. Letters and messages poured in from strangers who told me they finally had words for their own silent suffering. The world had named me something I had never dared call myself, a survivor. But as the spotlight glared brighter, I realized something vital. The cameras, the praise, the applause. They weren't the freedom I sought. They were fleeting. The real liberation wasn't in the article or in the thousands who knew my story. It was in the quiet, in the choices I made away from the noise. Because true freedom was not the flash of recognition. It was deciding, finally, what kind of life I wanted to live. So I stepped back. I closed my phone. I let the world speak while I turned inward. I built something new. It started small, with dinners shared at my own table, not out of obligation but out of choice, with friends who called not because they needed me, but because they cared. With the boys, who began to look at me not as the aunt who filled in, but as a steady presence they could depend on. They slipped their hands into mine when we crossed the street. They crawled into my lap for stories at night. One whispered, "You're like another mom to us." I thought my heart might break, not from pain, but from joy. The house, once a stage for false traditions, became a place of honesty. We decorated cookies, burned a few by mistake, and laughed until our sides hurt. There were no perfect photos, no staged smiles, but in the imperfection, there was something genuine, something I had been denied all my life. Amanda came too, hesitant at first, burdened by her own unraveling illusions. We spoke long into the night about what had been done to us both, and slowly we began to stitch a fragile bond. For the first time, we weren't rivals in our parents' cruel theater. We were sisters, equals, survivors. One evening, as the boys played and the room filled with the warm glow of string lights, I realized the truth that had eluded me for decades. The greatest revenge wasn't exposing them or watching them crumble. It wasn't the viral posts or the headlines. The greatest revenge was this: living freely, surrounded by love that was chosen, not coerced. I no longer needed my parents' approval, because I had built a life where their voices no longer mattered. They were still trapped in their own bitterness, replaying the same lies, clinging to control that had already slipped away. And I was free. I looked at the boys curled up on the couch, their laughter softening into yawns. Amanda smiled faintly from across the room, and I knew in that quiet that I had found what I had been searching for all along. Not vindication, not vengeance, but peace. The pain hadn't vanished, it never would, but it had transformed into something stronger, into wisdom, into purpose. Because the greatest act of defiance was not to destroy, but to live. The greatest revenge was not ruin, it was happiness.